Very good morning to you. The time is now 10:30 Eastern Time in the United States and 3:30 PM here in Scotland. Well, Irene downgraded just prior to landfall in Coney Island, New York City. I think a few folk were actually a bit disappointed that the system never crossed over the New York City area as a hurricane. It would have been the first time since the 1800s that we've seen that type of event take place in the New York City area. Now, Henry Margasitti quickly pointed out that that now, with the event of the tropical system now crossing over New York City, that's New York City seen every type of extreme weather event this year, from hail, tornado, heat, and a blizzard, and now a tropical storm. So a pretty remarkable thing for one location, and of course New York City, very, very big, busy, and they have indeed seen all extremes of weather over the course of 2011, so pretty impressive indeed. The system overall, folks, hasn't been just as bad, I think, as what many have feared, including myself. We have seen probably the biggest issue with the Hurricane Irene stroke tropical storm has been the major flooding in inland areas across New Jersey, central Pennsylvania. We've seen around about 20 inches of rain down in North Carolina, and we've seen reasonable storm surge, but again, I don't think it's been as bad. I believe the Norfolk, Virginia area did see some pretty substantial flooding, but overall New York City fared pretty well. We did see about 6 to 12 inches of water overlapping the boardwalk of Battery Park. There was that standing water. The live shot from Jim Cantoria, the Weather Channel, was showing us that. I don't know how much that water went beyond the boardwalk at Battery Park, but it was certainly pretty impressive to see that part of Lower Manhattan flooded. Interestingly enough, there wasn't the wave action that was feared as well. It was more just a water level rise. Overall wind speeds, it was obviously a tropical storm across New York City, but again, I don't think it was just as bad. It will be interesting once the winds then pass on by, and the weather does clear up, to see if there's any damage done to the buildings, particularly like blown out windows maybe in the mid to high parts of those skyscrapers, where of course winds would have been a lot stronger. That was the big fear, that we would be seeing maybe 90 to 100 mile an hour winds in the mid to upper levels of those buildings. But certainly I don't know if it's just been quite as intense as we first thought. Reports of part of the Holland Tunnel flooded, also unconfirmed reports of parts of Wall Street flooded as well. So the system now trekking northwards, we're seeing some very intense bands of rainfall and strong winds associated with the system now moving through New England, through Connecticut. There's some tremendous amounts of rain and flooding. Parts of Massachusetts, we're seeing currently a very intense band moving eastwards through eastern Massachusetts and potentially into the Boston area. A wind gust reported, I believe, at 72 miles an hour at Plymouth, Massachusetts. So the weather, certainly this system, folks, is not done with the northeast yet. We might find a very, very blustery day across New York City. The majority of the rainfall now pushing away from the city, because the southern end is basically non-existent in terms of precipitation. Sure, it's windy, but we're not seeing that intense rainfall. So thankfully that's some good news. We're seeing that passing on to the north now. But certainly under the gun, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine, and up into New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, we're seeing that weather all moving their way, and it's going to be a very rough afternoon and evening across northern sections of New England. But we've seen tremendous flooding, all-time records broken throughout Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Allentown, I believe, New York City, all seeing record rainfall, the most ever in any month. So very impressive indeed. I'm going to continue keeping track of the system throughout the rest of today, folks. I'm going to upload on the Weather Talk segment a whole bunch of videos that you've been uploading to YouTube of flooding and wind and storm surge. So check that out on Weather Talk segment here in the blog. I'm going to upload throughout the rest of today videos to that so that you can check that out. And I'm going to continue to upload information on the live feed section of the blog. So keep checking by. Some 4 million people, 4.1 million people now without power across the eastern United States, probably anywhere from, I believe there's nearly 1 million people in North Carolina alone, 200,000 in Connecticut. That's a record for the state of the most without power. And amazingly, folks, apparently the majority of Manhattan is not without power, so they actually held on to their power. Of course, a lot of underground power cables in New York City, in the Manhattan borough, but certainly I think it could have been a lot worse, folks, that's for sure. 10 deaths attributed to Irene. That number I'm sure will rise probably, especially up into New England now, where the worst of the weather is taking place. But I appreciate you continuously checking back to the blog. I've been working very, very hard for the past few days to try and keep you up to speed with what's going on with your own weather, and it has been quite an impressive hurricane and tropical storm, that's for sure. But stay tuned. I'm going to probably have another blog update later on today. But thanks for watching. Bye for now.